Hello everyone, welcome back. In our today's video, we are going to be discussing about nutrition and health. So in this chapter, we are going to be discussing about the different classes of nutrients and also about the deficiency diseases of a particular nutrient if it is going to be lacking for a prolonged period of time. Now let's take a look at what is the meaning of nutrition. Procurement of nutrients is only known as nutrition. So how is an organism going to get its nutrition? It is from the food which it consumes. Food plays a very important role in overall growth and development of an organism. Food provides nutritional support for an organism and it also contains essential nutrients that provides energy for performing various activities. Food helps in the normal growth and development of an organism, and it is also important for the repair of the worn out tissues and also to protect our body from various diseases. Now the food is basically divided into 5 classes as carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins and minerals. Now let's take a look at the first class of the nutrients, which are the carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are the energy giving food. So the carbohydrates are made up of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. So that is the reason they are known as carbohydrates. And the simplest unit of carbohydrates are the glucose. Now, based on how many molecules of glucose are present, carbohydrates are classified into 3 as monosaccharides, disaccharides and polysaccharides. The word mono means one and saccharides means sugar. So monosaccharides are group of carbohydrates which are made up of only one molecule of glucose. When we talk about disaccharides, the word di means two and saccharides means sugar. So disaccharides are carbohydrates which are made up of two molecules of glucose. So sucrose is an example of disaccharides. Moving on to polysaccharides. The word poly means many and saccharides means sugar. So if the carbohydrates are made up of more than 2 molecules of glucose, then it is known as polysaccharides. Starch and cellulose are good examples of polysaccharides. Now let's take a look at foods which are rich in carbohydrates. Potatoes, rice, bread, carrots, honey, sugarcane are some of the very rich sources of carbohydrates. Now the next class of nutrient that we are going to be discussing are the proteins. Proteins are the building blocks of our body and they play a very important role to repair the damaged tissues and also for the development of new cells. Proteins are made up of amino acids. There are 9 essential amino acids which are needed by our body and these 9 essential amino acids cannot be biosynthesized inside our body. So how are these 9 essential amino acids going to be obtained by human beings? It is from the food which we intake. Now let's take a look at the 9 essential amino acids. Phenylalanine, lysine, leucine, isoleucine, tryptophan, methionine, valine, threonine and histidine are the 9 essential amino acids. Now let's move on to look at the sources of different proteins. Eggs, fish, pulses, green leafy vegetables, soya beans and legumes are very good sources of proteins. So the next topic that we are going to be discussing is protein energy malnutrition. So protein energy malnutrition is due to the absence of proteins in the diet for a long period of time. Now protein energy malnutrition, under this we are going to be discussing about 2 disorders. One is Kwashiorkar and the other one is Marasmus. So now let's see what is Kwashiorkar. Kwashiorkar is a severe protein deficiency which affects children between 1 to 5 years. Now let's take a look at the symptoms of the disease. The symptoms of the disease are stunted growth, brown hair, mental retardation, anemia, underweight, swollen legs are some of the symptoms of Kwashiorkar. And the child also has a characteristic pot belly and this can be treated if proper amount of proteins are supplied to the kids affected with this condition. The next disorder that we are going to be discussing is Marasmus. So Marasmus is again a protein deficiency disorder, but it is not only because of proteins, it is also because of carbohydrates. So marasmus is a malnutrition of carbohydrates and proteins. So now let's take a look at the symptoms of the disease. The symptoms are poor growth, ribs clearly visible through skin, Decrease in subcutaneous fat. So what is this subcutaneous fat? It is nothing but a layer of fat which is present under your skin. So there will be decrease in the subcutaneous fat. Hair loss are some of the symptoms of marasmus. Now let's move on to discuss about the next class of nutrients, which are the fats. So fats provide us instant source of energy. So fats maintain the cell structure and it also helps to keep our body warm. Essential fatty acids are needed for proper functioning of brain. There is one very important fatty acid which is needed for our body and it cannot be synthesized by our body, and that is the omega-3 fatty acid, and we need to get this omega-3 fatty acid from our diet only. Now let's take a look at some of the sources of fats. Cheese, butter, egg yolk, nuts are very important sources of fats. So the next class of nutrient that we are going to be discussing are the vitamins. So vitamins are vital nutrients required in minute quantities to perform specific physiological and biochemical functions. So the word vitamins was introduced by Dr. Funk. There are two main types of vitamins: fat-soluble vitamins and water-soluble vitamins. Fat-soluble vitamins are vitamin A, D, E and K, and water-soluble vitamins are B1, B2, B3, B6, B12 and C. So what is this fat-soluble vitamins and water-soluble vitamins? So fat-soluble vitamins are those vitamins which can get stored in the fat cells, and those vitamins which cannot be stored under the fat cells are only known as water-soluble vitamins. Now let's take a look at the first vitamin, which is vitamin A. Vitamin A is also known as retinol. So the sources of vitamin A are carrots, papaya, egg yolk, fish liver oil, and apart from this, liver, dairy products are also good sources of vitamin A. Now let's take a look at the deficiency disease of vitamin A. So what is this deficiency disease? So deficiency disease is nothing but absence of a particular nutrient for a prolonged period of time. Deficiency of vitamin A will lead to nyctalopia and xerophthalmia. So nyctalopia is nothing but night blindness, where an individual will not be able to see properly in dim light, and xerophthalmia is the drying of cornea. The next vitamin that we are going to be discussing is vitamin D. Vitamin D is again a fat-soluble vitamin and it is also known as calciferol. The sources of vitamin D are eggs, dairy products, fish and sunlight. So the reason why sunlight is known as a source of vitamin D is because there is a type of cholesterol which is known as dehydrocholesterol which is there in our skin. So only in the presence of sunlight, this dehydrocholesterol can get converted into vitamin D. So this is the reason why sunlight is known as a source of vitamin D. So deficiency of vitamin D will lead to a condition which is known as rickets. So the symptoms of rickets are bow legs, defective ribs, development of pigeon chest. The next vitamin that we are going to be discussing is vitamin E. Vitamin E is also called as tocopherol, and the sources of vitamin E are whole wheat, vegetable oil, meat and dairy products. Deficiency of vitamin E will lead to reproductive abnormalities and sterility, where men and women will not be able to bear children. Next vitamin that we are going to be discussing is vitamin K. The sources of vitamin K are green leafy vegetables, soya beans and milk products. So vitamin K is very important for blood clotting. So deficiency of vitamin K will lead to blood clotting being prevented and also causing excessive bleeding due to delayed blood clotting. Now let's move on to water-soluble vitamins. Under water-soluble vitamins, the first vitamin that we will be discussing is vitamin B1. Vitamin B1 is also known as thiamine, and the sources of vitamin B1 are whole grains, sprouted pulses, eggs and liver. Deficiency of vitamin B1 will lead to beriberi. So beriberi will cause symptoms like degenerative changes in nerves, and it also leads to muscle weakness and ultimately leading to paralysis of an individual. Now let's move on to vitamin B2. Vitamin B2 is also known as Riboflavin, and the sources of vitamin B2 are milk, liver, green leafy vegetables, whole grains and egg. And deficiency of vitamin B2 will lead to a condition which is called as Cheilosis or ariboflavinosis. So the symptoms of the disease are dry skin, irritation in the eyes, and fissures in the corners of the mouth. The next vitamin that we are going to be discussing is vitamin B3. Vitamin B3 is also known as niacin, and the sources of vitamin B3 are milk, eggs, and liver. Deficiency of vitamin B3 will lead to a condition which is known as pellagra. So, what is this pellagra? The symptoms of pellagra are inflammation of skin and loss of memory and diarrhea. The next vitamin is vitamin B6. Vitamin B6 is also known as pyridoxine. The sources of vitamin B6 are fish, eggs, pulses, and deficiency of vitamin B6 will lead to a condition which is known as dermatitis. So, the symptoms of dermatitis are scaly skin and it will also lead to nervous disorder. The next very important vitamin that we need to be discussing is vitamin B12, which is known as CYNACOBALAMINE. So, this vitamin is rich in food items like milk, liver, and meat. Lack of vitamin B12 in our diet will lead to a deficiency disease which is known as pernicious anemia, which decreases the RBC's production and also causes degeneration of spinal cord. The last vitamin that we are going to be discussing is vitamin C. Vitamin C is also known as ascorbic acid, and vitamin C is rich in food items like all the citrus fruits. Oranges, lemon, and gooseberries are all a very rich source of vitamin C. And deficiency of vitamin C in our diet will lead to a condition which is known as scurvy. So, scurvy leads to symptoms like swollen and bleeding gums, delay in healing of wounds, and it also leads to malformation of teeth and bones. So, this is about the various vitamins. Now, let's move on to discuss about the different minerals which are needed by our body. Minerals are inorganic substances required as an essential nutrient by organism to perform various biological functions necessary for life. They are the constituents of our teeth, bones, tissues, blood, muscles, and nerve cells. So, based on the requirement, minerals are classified as macrominerals and microminerals. The macrominerals required by human body are calcium, phosphorus, potassium, sodium, and magnesium. The microminerals, which are also known as trace elements required by human body, are sulfur, iron, chlorine, cobalt, copper, zinc, manganese, molybdenum, iodine, and selenium. Now let's take a look at the first mineral, which is the calcium. Calcium is a constituent of our bones and teeth. Calcium is very much needed for blood clotting and also for the contraction of muscles. So let's take a look at the sources of calcium. The sources of calcium are dairy products, eggs, fish, cabbage, and deficiency of calcium will lead to a condition which is known as osteoporosis. The word osteo means bones and porosis means pores. So osteoporosis is condition where it is caused due to deficiency of calcium and the bones become very brittle. Now let's take a look at the next mineral, which is the sodium. The source of sodium is common salt. The function of sodium is that it plays a very important role in the neurotransmission, that is the transfer of message between one neuron to the next neuron. And lack of sodium in our diet will affect the nerve impulse transmission in our body. The next macromineral that we are going to be discussing is potassium. Rich sources of potassium are citrus fruits, banana, nuts, and sweet potatoes. Potassium plays a very important role in nerve impulse transmission and also in muscular activity. So, lack of potassium will affect the nerve impulse transmission as well as muscle activity. The last two minerals which we are going to be discussing are the microminerals. Under that, we will be discussing about iron and iodine. So, first let's take a look at iron. So, iron is very important component of hemoglobin, and deficiency of iron in our diet will lead to a condition which is known as iron deficiency anemia. If the hemoglobin level decreases in the blood, then eventually the oxygen carrying capacity of the blood will also decrease, because hemoglobin plays a very important role in carrying oxygen molecules to different parts of our body. So the sources of iron are spinach, dates, nuts, fish, liver, and broccoli. Now let's move on to the last micronutrient, which is the iodine. So iodine is very much important for the formation of an hormone which is known as thyroxine. Thyroxine is an important hormone which is needed to regulate the metabolism. Lack of iodine in our diet will lead to a condition which is known as goiter, which leads to swelling in the neck region. The sources of iodine are iodized salt and seafood. So I hope you understood the importance of various classes of nutrients as well as the deficiency disorders. So if you have any doubts, you can leave that in the comment section below. Thank you.